Hi, everyone. The purpose of English is to prepare you to write for other classes that you will take in college. Now, while we certainly can't cover every type of writing you'll do in college or everything you need to know, by the end of the semester you should know the basics of how to conduct research and write papers for other courses. I've set the course up so that as we work on each paper, we will build on what we learned by writing the paper before it. I think it's helpful for students to see how the skills taught for one paper expand on the skills we learned earlier in the semester. So I'm going to provide a video when we begin work on each paper to explain what's important to learn, why it's important, and how it builds on what we've learned in the class so far. Now we're going to start with the type of writing you've done before, although you might not have written formal papers on the topic. You're going to choose one day that was important to you in some way and write a paper that helps us experience what you experienced. Now, while the Twain quote on this slide is cool, I don't want you to think that you have to write about the day you learned why you were born. We all have a long journey to reach that day. I just want you to pick one day that stands out in your mind as being memorable. Now, the assignment sheet provides a considerable amount of detail and suggestions on topics, so I won't take up your time discussing that now. Make sure you study the assignment sheet very carefully because it's loaded with information that will help you succeed. One aspect of college-level writing that takes some practice is developing our papers with very specific, concrete details. That's one of the main skills we will learn while working on paper 1. As you'll see when you study the assignment sheet, you need to focus on the events of one day. It's okay to provide a little information about background near the beginning of the paper, or a little information near the end, or even as the conclusion that discusses what happened after that day. But the majority of your paper has to discuss the incidents of one day. That restriction forces us to develop the paper with details instead of preventing a vague discussion. The paper will take the form of a narrative, which is just the academic term for a story. We will lead our readers through the important events of the day in chronological order. Now, a phrase that we English teachers use a lot is show, don't tell. What that means in a narrative is that as writers, we try to make our readers see what we saw, hear what we heard, smell what we smelled, taste what we tasted, and feel what we felt. We do that by using very concrete descriptions. For example, instead of saying that we smelled the delicious aromas of food, we might say that the room was filled with the spicy, peppery scent of chili. We've all smelled chili before, and that language brings that rich aroma to mind. In fact, I'm getting hungry just talking about it. This week, we're going to review the basics of pre-writing. Now, technically, pre-writing is everything we do before drafting our paper, but it also refers to a group of techniques that we can use to decide what we want to write. Because there is no right or wrong way to do pre-writing, this is the only paper that you will be asked to submit pre-writing for. But just because I don't require it doesn't mean you shouldn't use the techniques we'll learn this week for every paper. These techniques can help us organize our thoughts and generate ideas. Not only are they useful before we begin writing, but they can be a really big help if we reach a point in our draft where we don't know what we want to say next or how we want to develop an idea. Even if we don't feel like we need to use them for every paper, they're handy tools to know because sooner or later we all run into an instance of writer's block. Now, back when Abraham Lincoln and I were in high school, they used to make us do really formal outlines. We had to pay attention to things like when we were supposed to use Roman numerals or capital letters, and then our papers had to stick to the outline exactly. I hated that. All that nitpicky Roman numeral stuff didn't help my writing, and having to stick to the outline limited what I could write in my paper. Now, since I hated it and never found it useful, I don't assign it. But scratch outlining is different. It's just making a list of what we think we want to write about in the order we think we're going to write about it. It's very informal, and it really only has to make sense to us because usually no one else sees it. You might not see how useful it is in writing the short papers we write for this course. But when you get to the point that you're writing 10 or 12-page papers that you've been researching for weeks or even months, a scratch outline can be really helpful. Now, while usually no one sees your scratch outline, I will have you submit one for every paper in this class. It gives me a chance to check to see if you're on the right track with what you're planning to write. Also, for some assignments, I'll ask for some specific information in the outline, and that will always be covered in the materials on Canvas. One of the skills all writers work on for their entire lives is wording. Even the best authors who are particularly known for their use of language, like Edgar Allan Poe and William Faulkner, worked on improving their wording throughout their lives. I'm sure that using wording well is something you worked on in writing throughout your life, too. We'll continue to work on it all semester, and this paper gives us the opportunity to work with using concrete wording to describe things that we are familiar with. There are several paper styles used in college courses, but one of the most popular is the MLA style. MLA papers have to be formatted in a specific way, and we'll learn how to format papers in MLA style while working on paper 1. That's all I'm going to cover in this short video. It's very important that you study the paper assignment sheet and actually all of the assigned information very carefully so that you can do a good job in paper 1. But I want to emphasize that I'm always here to help you. Even though we may never meet each other face to face, I care very much about you and I want to help you do well in the class. If you have any questions at all, or if you want me to look at drafts of your work, all you need to do is email me through Canvas. I check my Canvas email several times a day, Monday through Friday, and I will make every effort to help you any way I can. I'm here for you, and I want you to know that. Okay, with all of that in mind, let's get to work on paper 1.